Hello, my podcasting friends. I have never done this before with a video. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to upload it on YouTube and send you all the links. It's just so much easier for me to talk and to share my ideas that way than for me to write. I can just share so much more faster this way. So I hope that this will work. I'm sitting on the floor of my playroom/office where I record my podcasts. And yes, we have an indoor jungle gym in here. Okay, so there were a lot of questions on the surveys about how to reach out to guests that you want to have on your podcast, particularly like bigger guests, and you're not sure, bigger meaning that they may have a lot of influence, or they have a really big following, or they're a big name, like a big name author in your field or something. So there were questions about how to do that, how to get those guests. These are just some of my thoughts. First of all, somebody asked me if you have to have a huge following yourself before you are going to appeal to those people for them to want to be on your show. In my experience, most people are very honored to be asked to be on a podcast, and most people really like talking about themselves. So you would be surprised. Like, don't think I'm too small, my show is too small, this person would never say yes to me. Ask them. Like, you might as well ask them, and I think that you'll be surprised by the people that say yes. You do not have to have a huge following in order to get guests that have a huge following. That said, sometimes the bigger the person is that you're inviting, the busier they are, depending on what they do. And so, like, if you're inviting an extremely busy person to come on who has a lot of opportunities to be on podcasts and media, they may say no for that reason alone. Okay, that just died for a minute. I'm just going to keep going on this. My screen went to sleep, and I'm going to keep going though because I don't need to be a perfectionist on this. Okay, so if they're really busy, they may say no for that reason, but I wouldn't take it personally. And this also leads into another point that I have, and that is sometimes it's really not best to reach for the big names and the big following people because they are so busy, first of all, but also because they may kind of take it for granted that they're on your podcast and they may not prepare as well for the interview, and they may not share the interview at all. And one of the best ways that you can grow your own podcast is when the people who are on the show share the show. Sharing is the primary way that my podcast has grown. Either listeners who enjoyed the episode sharing, or the influencer themselves, the guest themselves sharing the episode. And a lot of times people with big, huge followings that do this kind of stuff a lot, they maybe aren't going to share the episode at all because they have their own content that they are sharing every day and that they're working through, and they just don't have the space, the time, the bandwidth to share. So honestly, my recommendation is don't ask a guest just because of their audience size or following. Ask a guest who truly excites you, who is an expert in the topic that you want to dive into, and go into it with an open heart of just, if they share, great. If they don't share, that's okay too. I want to create the best interview possible for the people listening, as well as for the guest. I want to give them an experience on my podcast that is so good, and they feel so honored and honored to be there, that they just have a really great experience with me and my brand. And if they do feel really treated well and honored, and you do an awesome job with the interview, they are going to be much more likely to share. All that to say, sometimes it's best to shoot for middle level influencers when you're trying to grow. Obviously, interview people who fit with your niche, whether or not they have any following at all. Some of my best interviews, the interview that I aired this week, I'm re-airing, it's an encore episode, is with one of my old colleagues and best friends. She has 0 online presence, and her interview is one of my most favorite interviews personally, as well as my listeners' most favorite interviews. So that should be more important than the amount of following. But if you are hoping to grow your show, it's always best to go for like middle level people who have influence and some following, but aren't so big that you're just going to get kind of like lost in the shuffle. So it's kind of good to vary that, to have like some guests that have no following, some that are like middle level, and some that have bigger followings. I don't know. I hope that this is helpful. They will invest more. Okay. And then this is the last thing that I want to say about inviting a guest to be on your show. Do not just send a quick little direct message on Instagram that says, want to come on my show. Before you approach them about coming on your show, research them a little bit, make sure you know their work. So it is a genuine ask. It's not just a, hey, I want to borrow your influence to build up my thing. It's a genuine, I love your work. This is what I love about your work. This is why I think you would be a benefit to my audience. And would you like to come on my show? And you can do that in an email or in a DM, but either place that you do it, make sure that you're starting with, hi Ashley, I've followed your account for a long time. This is what I love about it. I would be so honored to have you on my podcast. This is what my podcast is about. And you can sometimes like do it in both places, because I think different people have different preferences. When I get DMs, DMs are a great way to initially contact me, because I do read my DMs, but then things get lost. And so what I generally say to people if they DM me is, can you send me an email about this? But it is a way to get on my radar really quick in the DMs, and then I tell them to email me. Other people I've heard like, do not message me in DMs, just send me emails. I really think you can't go wrong doing both. In fact, you might want to just write an email that's heartfelt, not too long, but heartfelt, and send that, and then send a DM that's a briefer version saying, I love your work. I'd be so honored to have you on my podcast. I sent you a longer email with more details. And then they're kind of getting it in both places. So let me tell you what's been a big turnoff for me when sometimes people message me on Instagram and they just have one sentence that's like, do you want to come on my show? And I'm like, tell me about your show. Like, I don't know anything about you. Like, But what's even more of a turnoff for me is when people send me one line saying, can I come on your show? Or can we do like an exchange? Like they'll just email me one line and say, hey, or DM me one line and say, hey, do you want to do a podcast exchange? I'm like, and that's it. And I'm like, I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your show. It feels very like they're kind of using me and the community that I've built. Like they don't genuinely want me on their show. They just want to be on my show. And so they don't, does that make sense? I don't know. It just does not feel authentic at all that they even know anything about me or my community or what they could offer my community or what I could offer their community. So I think that's my biggest takeaway is put thought into who you ask to come on your show and be gracious and complimentary and tell them what they could offer your audience and what they could offer your audience and what you will offer their audience by recording this wonderful interview with you. You guys, I think a lot harder before I record my podcast than when I come on here and do these videos. But you're just going to have to take what you get with me speaking. Also, it's like 55 degrees in this room because the heat, our furnace, a huge chunk of ice fell on our gas meter and broke our gas meter like 3 days ago, and it's still not fixed, so we have no heat in our house. Okay, was that helpful? This is my first time ever doing a video, and I don't know how well. I don't think it's going very well. Was that helpful? Hit reply. Tell me what you learned. Tell me if you have any further questions. And just remember, don't be afraid to reach out to anyone, big or small, to ask them to come on your show. But just be really genuine about it. and prepare and research a little bit before you do it. That said, don't get paralyzed by perfectionism. You don't have to have like a perfect Shakespearean sonnet composed. Just 30 minutes or less of research, write the email, write the DM, and send it. And don't be afraid to follow up in a week or two if you don't hear back from someone. That's it for today. I hope you laughed at me in this video, and I hope you learned something. Tell me what you learned. Goodbye.